It's time for a grim fairy tale called Sweet Porridge. Come in, listen up. Many years ago, in a village not too far from where you live right now, there lived a beautiful young maiden in a small cottage with her elderly grandfather. The maiden and the grandfather did not have a lot of money. In fact, she had to go out every single day out into the forest, into the woods, and pick berries and find nuts and whatever she could find to bring home. And sometimes she would make some delicious meal with it, and sometimes they just had to eat them raw. Now, the grandfather could do a little bit of work, and he would sometimes trade some things that he had, just knickknacks that he had collected over the years, and he'd go into town and hopefully get some grain to make some bread or something like that. But overall, the grandfather and the maiden were very, very hungry. Well, one day, the grandfather said to the young maiden, "Dear, please go out in the forest with your basket. I have nothing else with which I can trade for food. Please collect as many berries as you can, as many nuts as you can find so that we can have some food to eat." Well, the maiden took her basket. She went out into the forest, and although her tummy grumbled and she was tired and weary, she went out into the forest and she began to find as much stuff as she possibly could. She found herself walking along the side of a very small brook. She looked down the brook. She noticed that there was another woman down there who had appeared to have fallen down and needed some help. So the young maiden went to the woman and said, "How can I help you out? How can you look like you've been hurt? What's going on?" And the woman said, "No, it's just that I'm so hungry. I thought I would just sit down here and rest for a bit before I find my way back home to get some food." Well, the young maiden, her tummy grumbled and she was so hungry, but she reached into her basket and kindly gave the woman some berries and some nuts until the woman had enough energy to take her back home. And she said, "Please, you've helped me out. Please, let me give you a gift. Let me give something back to you." And so the young maiden followed the woman back to her cottage. Once there, the young woman said, Whatever do you have that I could take from you?" The woman said, "Well, I don't have much, but I have this." She went to a cabinet and she opened it up and she reached inside and took out a black pot. The young maiden said, "I don't know what I'm going to do with that. See, I don't even have enough food to eat, let alone cook something in a black pot." The woman said, No. It's a very, very special pot. See, let me show you." And so she put the pot on the table and she said, little pot, make me something hot." And all of a sudden, this pot started to shake. It started to rumble. And the little young maiden, she looked inside the pot and it began to fill up from the bottom up to the top, full of sweet, delicious, hot porridge. And the smell hit her and her belly grumbled. And then the woman said, Now wait. It's a very important part. Once it's full, you have to say, little pot, you can now stop." And so she said those words, and the little pot stopped making the sweet, delicious porridge. Together they sat there and they ate their fill. And the woman said, "This pot is now yours. You will never go hungry again. You can have as much food as you need. This pot will always work for you, but never forget the words, little pot, make me something hot." And when she said that, the pot started making food again. She said, No, little pot, you can now stop. And it stopped once again. "Don't forget those words. Just don't forget them," the woman said to the young maiden. The young maiden thanked her, took the pot, and went home. She took the pot and she realized that she had left the basket full of berries and nuts back at the woman's cottage, but she didn't even care anymore because she had this magic little pot. She showed it to her grandfather. She said, "Grandfather, you've got to see this." "Grandfather, I sent you out to get some berries and some nuts, and you come back here with a pot that we have nothing to cook inside of it. The young man said, no. Just watch. She bent down close and she whispered to the little pot. She said, little pot, make me something hot. And again, it started to shake and it started to fill up with this sweet, delicious porridge. She whispered again, little pot, you can now stop. And it stopped. Together, they ate their fill, and the grandfather's belly felt so good to be full for the first time in a very, very long time. Well, they didn't have any kind of worry about food ever again. For many years, they didn't worry, and eventually the villagers began to get a little bit curious, and they sent one of the merchants to spy on this cabin because they wondered, why is this grandfather, this old man, no longer coming to the town to trade anything? How is it that they've been able to survive and they look healthy and full without having any money? What's going on? So they sent a very sly merchant to spy on them, and he peered through their window at morning time, at lunchtime, at dinner time, and he watched that little pot, and he heard those words. He heard the words, little pot, make me something hot. And he watched in amazement as this pot began to shake, began to fill up with porridge, and then he saw them eating, and it just magically stopped. But he was so excited, he never bothered to hear the magic words to make it stop. That night, he broke into their cottage. Really high-class character I'm talking about here. He broke into the cottage, he took the magic pot, and he took it home with him. He thought, if I have this magic pot, then I can make as much of this porridge as I want and then sell it out on the streets, and the old man and the young maiden are going to have to come to me for their food. I'm going to make a buck. He started. He leaned down close to that pot. He said, little pot, make me something hot. Oh, the little pot began to shake, it began to rumble, and that pot began to fill up with sweet, sweet porridge. When it was about done, he was looking at it and it started to overflow, and he said, hey, pot, you stop it, there's enough. He started to freak out. Stop making all the porridge. But the pot didn't stop making the porridge before too long. The whole table was covered in porridge. He was going, no, this is too much, you've got to stop. But it filled up and it covered the whole floor in his little hut. It filled up the whole hut all the way from the floor to the ceiling. He had to run out of the house. The porridge poured out of the windows and out of the doors, busted them all wide open, and the pots kept on making this porridge until it filled up the entire village. There was mass chaos. Mice were chasing cats, and cats were chasing dogs, and dogs were running from the porridge. Everybody was fleeing, screaming at the top of their lungs, no, drowning in porridge. Well, the little girl heard the screams. She poked her head out the window, saw the porridge. Waves of porridge began to rumble and roll towards her little cottage. She went outside and she shouted out, little pot, you can now stop. But by this point, the village was completely filled with porridge. Nobody else could enter their homes anymore. Well, the little girl, the young maiden, she went back to the porridge and to the town people, and she encouraged them that the only way you're going to get back through here is to eat your way. And they did. And after that, they all lived happily ever after. Jack and Jill went up a hill to slay a big old giant, tumbled down and broke his crown. Right. Hey guys, if they like this video, what do you think they should go ahead and do? Subscribe! Yeah! If you like this story, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. I know these two of my three kiddos would enjoy it too. We're going to have more stories to come every single week, so be looking for those. Right, Alara? Uh-huh. Right, August? Uh-huh. All right, say bye, guys.
Bye. Oh, remember, this is called Stories That Pop.
Stories That what?
Pop.
stories that
Pop!
pop.
Like explode!
Whoa, that's crazy. All right.
He's a pop.